Hi there, my name's Hermann Vorster.
Hi, I'm Dan Doran.
And today we're going to take you on a culinary journey that's going to prepare you for the next natural disaster which might strike the Gold Coast. Now Dan, what's the secret to today?
Follow Hermann's lead.
No, we want to avoid that disaster, but the lead we do want to follow are the instructions contained in this incredible recipe book, which is an amazing resource put together by the team at the Varsity Lakes Community Resource Centre. Now, this book is going to help you during times of natural disaster to make the most of your pantry staples.
At times we run out of power, you run into emergency services, you need to make do with what's in the pantry. And this is a great recipe book to help folks get through when the power goes out.
So today we're going to be cooking up a beautiful fried rice recipe using some staples that you might find in the pantry. It's a very quick and simple recipe. It's also very nutritious, exactly what you might need during a stressful natural disaster response. Now, talking about stress, Dan?
So I'm stressed because all of the recipes were submitted by locals, but this one's been submitted anonymously. So I'm a little worried about how we're going to go, but we'll give it our best shot.
Well, Dan, I think first step following the recipe here is to actually bring the frying pan up to a medium heat. As you said, power could be out, so we're working with a camp stove. And the way to get this one started is we actually want to turn off fuel lock and turn the dial to max. There you go. And there we go, it's on. Now we're cooking with gas. Brilliant.
We're going to warm up the fried rice over a medium heat. So if you get one packet over there, Herman, I'll get one packet as well.
Beautiful. Now, the great thing about this rice is it's actually pre-cooked. So that's going to reduce the cooking time and reduce your energy needs during a natural disaster. And the great thing is this actually stores for quite a long time in your pantry. We're just breaking up that rice. There we go. Now this is a fried rice and you can hear that sizzle. Delicious. All right, happy days.
Herman taking the lead on the jokes there too.
They're a bit ricey.
Oh no. We add a ding every time he does a dad joke. So I'm just moving this around to break it up because some of them were still a little bit together from the pouch.
So this recipe is designed for rapid cooking. So you're doing a great job there, smoothing out all the rice, making sure we get all of that heat distributed evenly. Now, how's that feeling?
Yeah, it feels good. And we remember, like what Herman said before, it's already cooked, so now we need to move on to the next part.
Okay, well the next part involves the vegetables. Now, this is a great part of the recipe because we're going to be packing in nutrients that you might need just to boost your immune system during a very stressful disaster response.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Herman said, tin food, tin vegetables as well, so we can make sure that they're always in the cupboard. So in case of emergency, they're always going to be there. They last a long time.
Just looking at this, this is a great little staple here because it includes peas, corn, and carrots. Rather than having 3 different cans with 3 different veggies, you can save space and save yourself a bit of time. We're going to just strain the contents here. You can see I'm just making a mess here, which is great. Straining the contents here. So we're not making a soup, of course. All right, beautiful. Now we're just going to add this can of veggies to the mix.
I'll just stir that around. Look out for any corny jokes.
Will be out of character. The great thing about these recipes, Dan, is they scale up and scale down really easily. So if you've got a big family, obviously doubling the quantity you can do to double the amount of people you can serve, but they're very forgiving recipes.
So just stirring through the 2 cans of vegetables with that 2 packets of rice. How many people do you reckon this will feed, Herman?
Well, look, you know, if you've got hungry teenagers, this is going to go in a flash. But the important thing is the ingredients are quite compact. So it's not going to require too much room in your pantry to be disaster prepared. I think a family of 4 should be quite satiated by a meal like this. Because of course we've got the ability to add other vegetables, including, for example, your baby corn, so you can really bulk up this dish.
So Herman, aside from having staples in the pantry, how else could families be prepared for natural disasters?
Being disaster resilient is more than just about having food, as you say. We want to make sure that people are able to access information that they might need in preparation of a potential evacuation, for example. So having a battery-powered radio makes a lot of sense. A lot of disaster communication will be transmitted on AM and FM, especially here on the Gold Coast. So radio is really important. Also make sure that you've got a plan for your pets. A lot of people just think about mum, dad and the kids, but pets can also put a huge emotional toll on disaster response. So making sure that they are looked after, that you have a carrying case for your little fur baby, really important as well. Now to add a bit of protein, you can take some long life spam, for example, chop it up into small pieces and add it in the mix.
Herman, have you had any experience with any emergency management or natural disasters?
Yeah, Dan, look, as you know, we live in a very dynamic city and it's subject to all sorts of natural hazards and pressures. So here on the Gold Coast, you might be affected by bushfire, you might be affected by cyclone or storm surge. These are things that we live with here in our natural environment. And like most Gold Coasters, I've been in a position where power's been cut for long periods, or I've worried about getting through floodwaters and avoiding them altogether. I think back to the massive rains and floods of 2005, our Christmas Day storms, but also a couple of years ago we had those bushfires. And with 50% of our city covered with natural vegetation, it's a risk we all live with. I've had the benefit too, an experience of working in the city's disaster management centre during ex-tropical cyclone Oswald. And it was very confronting because all of our beaches washed away. And there was a real taxing time through recovery, making sure that as a city we could bounce back. And it required so much heavy equipment, so much political courage, that you wondered whether we'd have enough resources to get the job done. But you know what? We bounced back, Dan. We bounced back.
You also had the experience of 8 years as a councillor representing a large part of Robina, which has a lot of flooding, and maybe not huge scale, but people do get cut off and fields do cut off and roads. Is that something you've got experience in managing? Yeah,
so a lot of the Gold Coast is actually built on floodplain, and that creates huge challenges for the city. Now, as you'd be aware, the city's working on a new flood code to guide future development, to make sure that new housing is more resilient to the challenges that we face. That's about making sure we don't put vulnerable user groups in areas where they might be impacted by flood and cut off from community.
So we can often have this sort of recipe for we think of the big natural disasters, the big things like Christmas storms, but it could be as simple as maybe your roads cut off from a flood event in the hinterland or in Robina or in places like that as well.
Yeah, that's right. So most developments in high risk areas have what are called flood emergency management plans. And residents in those areas are expected to be able to feed themselves up to 3 days while sheltering in place. So a recipe like this is something that they can have on hand to make sure that they've got a nutritious meal while they're waiting for water to subside. And isn't that looking just so tasty already?
Delicious. All right, so we've got soy, sesame, oyster sauce.
So why don't you add those now, Dan?
Onion powder as well.
So Dan, just because this is emergency food doesn't mean it doesn't have any taste. So what are some of the things that we can add to this meal just to improve its appeal, especially for those youngsters in our families?
Yep. So according to the recipe in our recipe book, we're adding some onion powder, which I've just added in now, and we're going to add some soy sauce. That is 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. So I am having a little guess at 2 tablespoons, Herman.
No, keep going. That's a teaspoon, buddy. Now this is fried rice. The soy is the hero here, mate, so bring it on.
You don't like to overspend.
There we go, mate. No,
right. Herman's making me overdo it on the soy, but I'll get the sesame oil right. So next is sesame oil. So like Herman said, it's got to be nutritious, but also it's got to taste good. Otherwise, the recipe won't work. So Herman, the Varsity Lakes Community Resource Centre, it's a resource for the community, but how can they help if residents find themselves needing help in an emergency?
The Varsity Lakes Community Resource Centre is located probably at the geographic heart of the Gold Coast, which puts it on the doorstep of thousands and thousands of locals. Now, this community centre plays an instrumental role, not just in disaster response, but also the important phase of recovery.
Yeah.
And during times of natural disaster, not only could you probably access services, but in the aftermath, you can access the help you might need to bounce back. If your home's been affected, if you've suffered psychological distress, if you're not sure what services you might be able to access, the Varsity Lakes Community Resource Centre can put that at your fingertips. And by bouncing back more quickly, you're going to bounce back much better.
That's right. It's a sense, like you mentioned, it's in the name as well. During the Christmas storms, it really was a place for the community to come together. One of the things I remember from the Christmas storms was the air conditioning that was recently installed just before the storms became a really wonderful place for the community to get together in that heat. I remember folks from the hinterland coming all the way down to Varsity because their pets were in distress during the heat, came here, spent the day, had a cup of coffee, and really started to feel like people cared and they had a place to be while they were recovering from that event.
Yeah, that's such an important point. I think often we forget that there are lots of Gold Coasters who might be socially isolated, maybe living by themselves, maybe living in medium density housing, not really knowing their neighbours. So a Varsity Lakes Community Resource Centre is a destination where people can get reconnected to their neighbours. So maybe next time there's help on hand closer to home.
Yeah.
Now here you've opened up a can of capsicum. Oh, red or green? What's your favourite there, mate?
Green.
Yeah.
But like you say, it's forgiving. So this recipe will even tolerate our cooking skills.
Beautiful. More colours than a Christmas tree. Now, Dan, you're a local area councillor. You're at the grassroots of community work. Surely you've got some views on how community can work with one another and how neighbours can cooperate to be more resilient?
Yeah. Before a natural disaster, it's important to know your neighbours and if you can, to make sure they're as prepared as you are. So as you go into your preparedness kit, whether it be a kit for the pantry or for other emergency supplies like a burner like this, it's good to check in on the neighbours and make sure that they've got it as well. And making that connection also helps in the case of a natural disaster, because you might need to rely on them for support. And so we've talked about this a bit, but that sense of community is really important in any natural disaster.
Well, Dan, I'm happy to say I think this recipe has come together pretty well. What do you say we plate it up and let's give it a go?
Sounds like a plan.
Serve this up for you, mate. Wow, that is looking and smelling just delicious.
I'll get a plate for you, Herman.
Thanks, mate.
We'll probably have extra corn for you.
There we go. Do love that corn. It's actually a favourite of my youngest. He calls them daddy bull corns.
Daddy bull corn.
Yeah, because he holds them up on his forehead and looks like a bull. Beautiful. Now look at that. Wonderful. Even not during a natural disaster, you might want to pull out one of these recipes. It seems to be a quick, nutritious dinner.
It's probably too hard for me on my own, but...
There you go, Dan.
One for you.
Happy days.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate. It's been a pleasure. That's incredible.
Very good.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We've had a lot of fun, but there's been a serious message as well. And that's about taking some personal responsibility for our disaster preparedness. Because when we're more resilient, we can bounce back stronger and overall as a city be in a much safer place.
Absolutely. And so it's important to know where you can get things like this great recipe book. So Herman, where can we get them?
Well, there are community centres right across the Gold Coast where you can pick them up, beginning at the Palm Beach Neighbourhood Centre. And of course, right here at the Varsity Lakes Community Resource Centre, but also at Nerang, their neighbourhood centre.
Yep.
I think there are locations at Oxenford and Studio Village as well. Now, Dan, I think we're going to get stuck into this bowl. Let's finish it up because food should never be wasted. And you shouldn't waste the opportunity to be disaster prepared.